Man, you cannot marry a woman without gills. You're from two different worlds. Oh, I've wasted my life.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and not a lot of comic books to review this week, but I figured I would review Action Comics 1028. This is the finale of Brian Michael Bendis and the final issue in the House of Kent story arc. I think it's the House of Kent story arc. Interesting comic. I will say this: if Superman 28 was just an abysmal way to say goodbye to the title, this is probably the best thing that Brian Michael Bendis could do. I don't personally recommend it. You know, it's still a 2-star comic, but for what he was working with, I think this is a more pleasant goodbye than he had on Superman. Although I will say this, I don't know why this comic book exists. Action Comics 1027 concluded the story arc. Leon is on the run. Jimmy Olsen owns the Daily Planet, you know, and so there's a couple of things that happen in here, but, you know, I came away flummoxed. I'll tell you that. I wasn't confused by the story like I was in Superman. I was just confused why it existed. You know, it felt like, you know, you probably could have just put the end on 1027 and not even published this comic book, and nothing would have been lost. But as far as a goodbye for John Romita Jr. and Brian Michael Bendis on Action Comics, this is probably the best one that they put out together, period. This is the best issue of Action that JRJR and BMD put together during the run together. So congratulations to them. At least they end up on somewhat of a high note, even if it's still not the greatest comic. But I do want to say this before I get into all the details of what I'm actually talking about. If you haven't subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoy these reviews. Give me a thumbs down if you don't. Either way, I want to hear your comments on Action Comics 1028. What did you think of the comic? Are you excited for Philip Kennedy Johnson to be the new writer starting in March 2021? You know, obviously, I do wish Brian Michael Bendis the best of luck moving forward, but I am glad to see some new blood on Action Comics. Wish they had maybe 2 different writers for Action and Superman, but hey, I'll take Philip Kennedy Johnson for sure. So this is a Brian Michael Bendis comic. There's going to be too much dialogue. The personalities aren't going to, you know, differentiate themselves, you know, while they're speaking and stuff like that. But so the first big thing they clear up is Jimmy Olsen buying the Daily Planet, and he's now the boss of Lois Lane and Perry White and Clark Kent. And there's this really exhaustive explanation, and it goes more than just this panel right here. It turns out that he's apparently his family and Lex Luthor's family, like ancestors of the same people. So half of whatever Lex Luthor had was actually Jimmy Olsen's, and they agreed that Jimmy could spend his money on what he wanted as long as he let Lex Luthor do what he wanted. So he got half of Lex's fortune or something and used it to buy up the Daily Planet. I imagine this happened in the pages of Superman's best pal, Jimmy Olsen, with Matt Fraction. Obviously, I was not reading that. Don't know why this needed to be included there. They should have just had him buy it. Like, I didn't need the explanation. I don't think it really provided much context. There was some humorous interaction. I'm being generous when I say humorous, but you could tell he was trying to be humorous, and he didn't fail completely between Perry White and Jimmy Olsen. And I will say this. This is easily the best rendered issue of Action Comics from John Romita Jr. He must have had more time. The faces look a little bit cleaner. The expression's a little bit better. It's noticeably better than all the other stuff he got together. I wonder if he got some extra time to do this with that. So kudos to JRJR. It's still not a beautifully illustrated comic, but certainly much better. And if the whole run had looked like this, it would have been nicer. I'll tell you that. So I don't get this. There was Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen series from Matt Fraction, and when did that stop? Wasn't that months ago? I don't think that's been out for a very long time, but apparently they ended up connecting months later in the completely unnecessary Action Comics 1028. And the other conclusion, I guess, that we get is with Connor Kent. I didn't even know that I was waiting for the conclusion of this. I know that they were doing some investigating to kind of figure out maybe exactly where he came from, but it turns out what they're really interested in is he going to have a long life, and is he going to lose his powers? It turns out he does not have a clone kill switch on him from Mr. Terrific and the Atom, so he's not going to die early. He's going to get the same lifespan as any other human, I guess, but he may lose his powers over time. Okay, didn't know I was interested in that. In fact, I wasn't. Like, was that one of the big mysteries in Action Comics, and it just went right over my head? I thought we were reading about the Invisible Mafia and the Red Mist and Leviathan and all that stuff. I didn't even know I was supposed to be worried about Connor Kent. Was that a big story arc that I did? I was just too dense to realize that Bendis was writing this super layered, textured story about Connor Kent and whether or not he's going to have powers and if he's going to drop dead because he's a clone. If that happened, I completely missed it. And then the other, so they decide, there's another part where they address that Superman doesn't remember Connor Kent, but he remembers other things that happen in the multiverse through other crises. And there's an explanation. I don't know why. I still don't get it, but there's an explanation why Superman forgot Connor Kent, but other people remember him, but Superman remembers other things. And it's a good thing, according to Mr. Terrific. But I don't know why. It is, though. This is the low point. I wasn't a big fan of the Jimmy Olsen, Perry White shenanigans, but that was certainly better done than this. But they do find a place for Connor Kent. He gets taken to the Kent family farm. He's like, should I change my name? Why would you change your name? His name isn't Clark Kent. You're Connor Kent. Why would you change your name? Superman obviously is like, no, you're not changing your name. You're going to go live with Mom and Pa Kent. They're going to love you like they would anybody else, and you were raised by them. And there's a reason you feel at home on the farm. And Crypto welcomes him with open arms. So that's the conclusion to the Connor Kent story arc that I didn't even know I was reading. I thought he was just there, as another character. I didn't realize he had his own extra story arc, like what's going to happen to Connor. Why didn't they do that in Young Justice? Shouldn't that have been? That's where I think this all started in Young Justice, and that must be where that all got introduced. Because I didn't realize I was reading that story. But interesting enough, Brian Michael Bendis does get a little bit petty in this at the end, which I'll get into. John Kent and Clark go out on some adventures and talk things out. But right here down in the bottom, you've got John, you got Clark Kent, and they're talking. They picked up a school bus. I believe they're changing the tire, and somebody in the crowd says, "Hey, you should team up with Robin. That's all you should ever do." Obviously, speaking to John Kent, that is actually Brian Michael Bendis chastising the people that said, why don't we have the Super Sons? Why did you age up John Kent? Why did we miss out on his childhood? They also address that part too here in the story. I love how Brian Michael Bendis acts like John Kent's been a stagnant character for 20 years in DC Comics. He'd existed for 2.5 years when Brian Michael Bendis took over. Everybody was enjoying the newness of John Kent on the Superman story with him being a family man. And they were enjoying Super Sons because there was a new dynamic, a new Batman and Robin. And it was fixing the Robin Damian Wayne character. And then he abruptly changed it for no reason. It's not like this had been going on for 2 decades and was boring and stagnant. This was all, as far as comic books, and timelines go, it was all very new and still fresh with readers. And this is just ridiculous that even put it in there. I got nothing against Bendis. He seems like he's a nice guy, but he's very petty. He's used multiple times. He's used Superman or Action Comics panels in there to basically chastise the readers for complaining about his shitty Superman run or his shitty Action Comics run. This is stupid. He should still be teaming up with Robin. You should have aged him up. And I guarantee you, if DC could do it all over again, they would tell you no. So there you go. Stop being petty, Brian Michael Bendis. He should still be with Robin. And it's not, that's all you can ever do. It had only been a cup of coffee as far as comic book timeline goes. It's not like it'd been a stale, status quo for 20 years. It literally had just happened. And then basically we get Clark Kent and Jonathan Kent, before John goes back to the 31st century in the Legion of Superheroes. They talk about Saturn Girl and Taco Tuesday and Mother's Day, and he's still in trouble. And they're just going around Metropolis doing good deeds, and they save a guy in a hot air balloon, and looks like there's a tree that was going to fall on some kids, and I don't know. This is like Brian Michael Bendis trying to have like the ending for a comic book that nobody can complain about, but he forgot. Thinking Critical still exists, and I see right through this. This is all boring crap. It shouldn't even exist. It means nothing as far as the story goes. He just put it on there so you'd be like, well, he had a good ending to it. He had a better ending to it than he had than the rest of the series, but this isn't good. It's just like that stupid scene with Lois and Clark dancing with the little lady playing her guitar in Superman. He's just putting it in there so you feel like you got a good ending to the story. But this isn't the ending to the story. The ending of the story was Leon's missing, and they defeated Red Mist. This is like the world's worst, most boring epilogue. And surprisingly, the world's most boring epilogue is the best issue of Action Comics. That's how bad it got, people. And then they end up, Clark Kent's back at the Daily Planet. He's got to go to Kandak. He flies off as Superman. There's a reporter complaining that Clark's going to get the scoop. And it's like, can you beat him to Kandak? And then there's some jokes about tacos. And that's the ending. This is like the least, least interesting, most inoffensive way that Brian Michael Bendis could have ended Action Comics, which really just, it was a train wreck there at the end. John Romita Jr.'s art was terrible. His story was terrible. They made the perfect storm of like really bad comic book. Obviously, I will be talking about just like the whole thing in general. I do my worst comics of the year. But this was his best effort. Probably the best issue of Action Comics that he and JR, not probably, this is the best issue because it was inoffensive and boring. It was, that made it rise above the rest. This is a 2-star comic. I don't recommend it. I'm glad Brian Michael Bendis is gone. I wish him the best in his future endeavors. Hopefully he doesn't ruin Justice League. I imagine that will happen. But this is a snooze fest, which, unfortunately, it's a step up in the world of Superman lately. So I don't know if you guys liked it. Let me know in the comment section. And but I doubt many people enjoyed this. This is yeah. It is what it is. It is what it is, people. It is what it is.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.